Well, we are in day 2 or 3 of America's latest war. It's something, isn't it? Let me just pull up the. Let me let you guys pull. Let me just pull up my video feed so I could see what's going on here today, and I'll give you a better idea of what we have on tap for today. Hang on, let me just kind of get myself organized here. Hey, 305 all day. Good morning. How are you today? Wow. So this morning we already have reports coming in that 3 U.S. jet fighters were accidentally shot down by the Kuwaitis. And we already have reports that 4 U.S. service members have been killed. We already have reports that 4 U.S. service members have been killed, that 3 fighters were shot down by the Kuwaitis. Oh my goodness, Jonathan's here already. All right, guys, we're gonna actually start a little bit earlier. My our interview today is with Jonathan Jacobs. Jonathan is calling in right now, so I'm gonna bring him in, and I wasn't expecting him till 11:15, but we'll take him. Hang on for just a second. Let me bring Jonathan in. Hey, Jonathan. Jonathan's in the green room, but it doesn't look like he is. It doesn't look like Jonathan has it. Oh, Jonathan's got his microphone on. Let me bring Jonathan in. Hang on one second. Hey, Jonathan. How are you?
Hey, Mitch. How are you? Good. It's good to see you.
I'm doing good. It's good to see you too, man. I just logged on. The folks are starting to kind of come in a little bit, so we'll give them a few minutes to trickle in. Jonathan, I'm gonna introduce you in a second. I just want to give a few more folks a chance to come in, but I'm going to do this. I thought about how I wanted to start this conversation with you today, because there's so much I want to talk about with you, and I'm going to do.
You picked the right guy to talk. I love that.
It's a good thing. I hope this isn't an ambush, because I have an idea. I'm going to do things a little bit differently.
Okay.
Because I saw one of your Instagram posts as I was kind of prepping for the interview.
Uh-oh.
It's a good one. That seems so appropriate for the moment. And I'm gonna throw out, once again, give folks just a few more minutes to come in, but I'm gonna throw out a couple of quotes from Pete Hegseth this morning. And I'm going to then share your Instagram post. And I'm going to ask you like a 4-word question that I think I already know the answer to. Because I know your focus is, healthy, helping men find ways to connect with healthy forms of masculinity. And I didn't think about this until I saw your post this morning, but it seems like we might be in a moment that might be right now the most unhealthy example of, a dysfunctional perception of masculinity gone awry. And I hadn't seen the war that way until 20 minutes ago. So let me introduce you first.
That sounds good to me.
Then I'll toss it.
Yeah.
So guys, I know people are just trickling in. We have Jonathan Jacobs is with us right now. Jonathan is an entrepreneur. He's a marketing expert. He's an influencer. And I'm just going to kind of read a little bit from his website. And then I'm going to let him kind of extrapolate on it a little bit. And then we're going to get into some stuff here. So Jonathan Jacobs is an entrepreneur, marketing expert, and investor who is actively in pursuit of developing his own relationship to healthy manhood. Jonathan co-founded the Digital Natives Group, an award-winning digital marketing agency. And over a decade, Digital Natives Group built a track record of success working with everyone from the NFL to Comcast to NBC Universal, the Nature Conservatory, Fortune 500 CFOs. So he's well established in the world of marketing, in the world of business. But Jonathan also, his website is a call to men, the next generation of manhood. And I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's his passion project and his, where his heart is right now. Did I get all that right? And can you kind of extrapolate
The
on?
only correction, I would love to take credit for a call to men. I'm on the board of a call to men. I didn't found the organization,
Okay.
but I've worked very closely with them for 3 years. But your assessment and description is spot on. This is absolutely the. It's not just a passion project. I say this is the work of my life. This is the stuff that I really care the most about.
And can you explain what it is that you're doing? I mean, even and certainly,
Yeah.
you and I have talked about this offline, but I live and breathe politics, but you go
Mm.
well beyond politics, even to the point where politics can kind of interfere sometime with what it is that you're trying to achieve. Can you give everybody an idea of
Sure.
exactly what you're doing and how it
Sure.
goes beyond politics?
Sure. So I always say there's two starting points to the story of how I got engaged in this work. And starting point number one happened about 5 years ago. And I'm not going to tell that story now because I think it'll come up later in our discussion. And that part of the story is how I entered men's work generally. Part two of that story is how I entered men's work really with a lens towards what's happening to our civil society and our communities. And that happened in I was about to say 2014, 2024 with the Harris Trump election.
Okay.
During that election cycle, I had the privilege to lead a group called Creatives for Harris, along with a couple colleagues of mine, where we were doing all these creative projects to support the campaign as an unaffiliated organization. I'm sure listeners remember things like White Dudes for Harris and Win with
Yes.
Black Women, all these organizations that were popping up. So we were one of those. And then when the election result happened and we saw the numbers, I was despondent. It was just, we do all this work and men keep voting the same damn way over and over again. And I was so lost and I was so frustrated and I had no idea what comes next for me. And through the election cycle and a little bit prior to that, I'd become very close with a gentleman by the name of Mark Green, who is now a friend and a partner in a venture we're working on together. And Mark, he said, I'm going to start just a walking group for men in my community and to connect with men. And at that time in my life, I was moving to a different neighborhood in Los Angeles where I didn't know anyone and I was hoping to meet some new people. And along with that, I was reflecting on the fact that so much of our politics is about asking people to care about people who live 500 miles away. But most of these people don't even know who lives 500 feet from them.
Yeah.
So that's a really difficult emotional exercise to say, I care about the fate of that person so much so that I'm willing to do something that might impact me in the short term, even when I don't know who my neighbor is. And the example I'll give you that really solidified for that for me was another gentleman who was doing door knocking during the campaign told me he knocked on the first door and was talking to the person and they said, "Oh, who are you here for?" He goes, "Well, I'm part of Harris." He goes, "Well, I'm voting for Trump, amazing businessman, absolutely not. That don't talk to me." The same guy, he goes 2 houses down, starts talking to that person, and that person says, "I'm going to stop you right there. There's not a chance in hell I'm voting for Trump. I did work for him. He never paid me. Terrible businessman." And that guy and I were both like, these two men live on the same block and they're not in conversation with each other. That's the problem we need to solve, is this disconnection from community that we all have. And so to bring this back to your point of why I approach this from the lens that I do, is that men are just disconnected from the role that they play in social and civic society. And so the lens that I have for this work, especially because I am a white man, is that I can work to try to bring them back to that, because it is safe for me to do that. I do not put myself in harm's way or in danger, right? A black woman may not be able to do this work. A black man may not be able to do this work. A Muslim woman may not be able to do this work, but I can. So the lens that I have is saying, I'm going to invite you over, come shit in the house. You might say the wrong thing, you might do the wrong thing, but I will be there with you. I will see you for the fullness of your humanity. And then we can work together to educate on perhaps why what you did is wrong, understand the place that it came from, and understand an alternative approach to get there. And the reason why I sometimes avoid politics as a part of that is because when you mention politics, even when you just mention the name of a politician, people bring too many preconceived notions, right? We all have these
Yes.
synapses and these neural networks we rely on to make shortcuts. Well, we all have shortcuts when we hear the words Democrat and Republican, right? We'd be lying if we said we didn't. So the reason I try to defrag those is to say people will not hear my message if that is the content that I am bringing them. So I never shy away from discussing my politics. I am very outspoken about the issues I care about. But when I'm at least trying to have the masculinity conversation, I know that I'm trying to put things out there that will reach a wider net. And sometimes politics, I have to avoid that to make that possible. Because yes, the end result is that I want someone to ideally vote a certain way, but I can't start the conversation with the thing you're doing is wrong, vote for my thing, end of story.
Yeah, that's a great point. And like, you know, full disclosure, I'm going to confess. This will be my confessional right now. I suffer from exactly what you're trying to fix, and I'm so glad that I'm getting to know you, because look, right there, right across the street. I know there's a guy that lives across the street that's a little bit older than me. He lives by himself. I know he's
Mm,
alone. I would bet, just bet, and I could be wrong, but I would bet in terms of his politics, he's the polar opposite that I am. We're very cordial.
mm,
I've been living in the, I moved into the, when my wife and I got married, we moved into, she had a house, I didn't, we moved into her house. So I've known this guy for 15 years. I say hello to him. We were
mm,
both out, and that's it. We were both out shoveling snow. And I'm like, hey, I don't want to out him here, but hey, so and so, had enough snow, and he yelled across the street, had enough. He sure did. And I always feel bad that I don't
mm,
know him. It's
mm,
ridiculous, but I don't. And then there's a guy, a young man, who lives right there, right? And again, we're very nice. And I have no idea, but I would bet the politics are the same. But
mm,
there's something in me, some weird trigger that I didn't have when I was a child, because when I was a child, I met people and had friends, but there's some sort of isolationist policy that somehow
mm.
got built into me as a grown
Yeah.
up. And I'm very cautious about
Mm,
getting to know these two dudes that are literally, you know, right near me for years. And
right.
so you really, when you were speaking right now, it just struck a nerve
Mm.
because I'm living it,
Well,
you know.
yeah, and what you're saying, it is, you are not alone. Let me say this. You are experiencing the thing that so many other people experience. I still experience it. And there's two factors that are part of that. Number one is, yes, we are really brought up with the idea that men are isolationists, right? We men can be an island. We don't need other people. We're fine on our own. Contain your feelings. But I also think the bigger part of that, especially when it comes to interpersonal dynamics between men, is the ingrained homophobia we are all brought up with. And that doesn't
Yep.
mean that you and I are homophobes. I certainly know based on our politics that we're not. However, we hold subconsciously a lot of these ideas that prevent us from creating and fostering vulnerability with other men. Because the moment that you go beyond that, hey, how you doing? How much snow you got? When you walk across the street, when you go to ask him, hey, how are you really doing? When you put that arm on the shoulder, it's sus, right? There's
Yeah.
immediately an ulterior motive. It's not friendliness. It's not just kindness. There has to be kind of a role behind that because we're trained to believe that's what it is. Like either they want something from me or this is a play because they're interested in me. And unlearning that, I think it takes a lifetime of work for all of us. I know I still carry pieces of that I'm discovering I have to unlearn over time, but it's really problematic. I know a lot of wonderful people in the space who are working really hard to help boys, especially unlearn that, because that's when they are learning these things that we don't interact with men in a certain way. But I think we take it in a lot as kids, and oftentimes we don't really see it manifested sometimes until we're adults when we are starting to look to make connections, and then we realize I actually don't know how to do this because it requires vulnerability, and that's been trained out of us.
Wow. That's heavy. I mean, that really, as I said, it really touches a nerve. Um, I'm gonna we're gonna circle back to this because I think like you said, as we start to talk about the politics of the moment, um,
Mm,
this is, I think we're going to wind up where we started. I think we're going to bookend this and I could talk to you the whole time about this as well.
Hey, that's a great. That sounds like a great comedy special and a great podcast. Let's do a callback. I love it.
Awesome. So here's where I want to start. Now, folks that are just joining us, you may have come on a little bit, a little bit later. Jonathan is with me, and we'll reintroduce him a little later for folks that just came on. But I'm going to start this a little bit unusually, and I kind of gave Jonathan a little bit of a heads up while he was here in front of everyone. I'm gonna read some Pete Hegseth quotes right now, and then I'm going to show you all one of Jonathan's Instagram posts from very recently, and then I think it's a 4 or 5 word question for him. So, and I have to see if I can even read my own writing here. So, in Hegseth's speech this morning, he said that one of the things he said that this is the most lethal, most complex, and most precise aerial operation in history. Another thing he said, among other things, we will hunt you down and we will kill you. Another thing he said, many have said it, and don't worry about the context because there's a specific point that I'm getting to here. If you know Hegseth, you can guess what the context is anyway, but that's not the point. Many have said it, but it takes guts to actually enforce it. This president has guts. Another thing he said, the regime who chanted death to America and death to Israel was gifted death from America and death from Israel. Another thing, I have just a few more of these. I know they're hard to hear, but Operation Midnight Hammer, that was the summer attack that was supposed to have eradicated, according to Donald Trump, the village idiot, right? Completely eradicated. Anything else is fake news, right? That eradicated all their nuclear capabilities forever. It's one of the reasons why we're attacking now. The reasons are changing, though, every couple of hours. But Operation Midnight Hammer obliterated their nuclear program to rubble. President Trump doesn't play games. We set the terms of this war from start to finish. No stupid rules, no politically correct wars, no apologies, no hesitation. Epic fury. Now, I want to show you guys, and hopefully, Jonathan, you can see this. I've never tried this out with a streaming platform. So hopefully you'll be able to see this as well when I switch scenes. If not, I know you'll be able to hear it and you'll kind of, you'll remember it. I hope.
Yeah.
Let me just switch the scenes over. And let me switch my thing here. So let me just.
Oh yeah, I see it.
Does this thing that when he's insecure, he uses the military to make himself feel like a man. Listen, last night, the State of the Union was a thing. It happened. And it was a reminder that this White House is not only filled with men who feel insecure about their masculinity, but who will proudly use and abuse members of our armed forces to bolster their own. During last night's awards gala, there were 5 medals given out to members of the armed forces, including 2 medals of honor, which Trump, for some reason, said he wants to give himself. Listen, this isn't what it looks like to show appreciation to our armed forces. If this administration actually cared about our armed forces, they wouldn't have gutted employment within the VA. They wouldn't have tried to reduce and restrict benefits for disabled veterans. These are the actions of a president who doesn't actually care about veterans, but who sees them as a means to reasserting manhood as a form of domination and control. The need to be a guardian warrior dripped all over his speech last night. I protect, I stopped, I ended, I will never allow. He was saying these things even when they weren't true. And he says them because he has to. It's what makes him feel good, even if it's doing nothing for the rest of us. It speaks to the idea he has in his head of what it means to be a man. And he will put our entire country at risk to soothe that fragile ego if that's what makes him feel like a guardian warrior. He'll use the military to settle personal vendettas. He'll gut our legal system to avoid accountability. Do everything a protector is not supposed to do. We cannot let him renew domination, misogyny, and racism as the grounds for how this government and this country are supposed to operate.
Oh, sorry, that's the wrong scene. That's if I have 2 guests. Hang on, let me bring up. This is the one guest. I know it's a way more complicated situation that I'm about to throw it at you, but is this where we are right now? Are we? Is this Trump's pathological need to be the guardian warrior, and Pete Hegseth's clearly pathological need to be the guardian warrior that has? Is that what we're seeing manifest right now from your perspective, with your understanding of toxic masculinity?
I think for me, it's 100% that. First of all, I have to say, it's funny to watch that video again because I'm reminded I forgot to cut the video when the visuals ended and the audio continues for 30 seconds. So that's one of those things where you remember sometimes you move too quickly. But I absolutely agree with you. I think what we're seeing in these moments, to me, it's Venezuela, it's what I imagine is going to happen in Cuba next. It is this need to use strength and military power to assert identity. And we see it again and again in patterns of behavior from these two men, not just in this administration from 2000, from Jan 2005 to today, but throughout their lives and careers, right? There is ample reporting on both of these men, especially in the case of Trump, the issues they had with paternal figures growing up, Trump learning a form of power and identity from Roy Cohn. We see it all the time in the way that Pete Hegseth has behaved as I refuse to call him Secretary of War, as the Secretary of Defense.
Sure.
That is what these men, this is the only form of identity they understand, is masculinity and through power and domination. And it drips through every speech that Hegseth has given publicly as in this role. It goes back to what he said when he was in front of all the admirals and generals last fall. That speech, it was all about performance, right? Putting out these random physical attributes that people have to have that make absolutely no sense and do not build a fighting force for the 21st century, because their idea and conception of what it is to be this warrior is grounded in this 1950s ideology because someone once told them they were not man enough. And it was so funny because right before I hopped on with you here, the first thing I do after I check my email and have my morning routine is I open The Hill, because I go, all right, what terrible thing has happened today I have to have an opinion on. And I saw that Hegseth and Raising Cane gave their speeches this morning. I said, I'm sure Pete said something I'm going to have a problem with. So there you go. And I think this is the 21st century's first insecure masculinity war. That's what this looks like to me. This is men who are trying to cling to power, who are trying to generate a rally around the flag effect ahead of the midterms. And this is their way of doing that because it's the only way they know how to try to get people to love them.
And how, with that type of personality, right? And I mentioned, when you were sort of explaining what you do, and I had that aha moment when I thought about my neighbors that I don't know, right? I mean, and had you talked about our upbringing and everything else, and I came to realize that, but at least I'm self-reflective enough to own it, right? I came to realize that, holy shit, I mean, I'm doing this too. And now we see obviously the malignancy of that sort of thinking in these two supposed leaders. How much danger do you think? And again, I mean, I don't know if it's a fair question. I know you're not a therapist. But I don't.
That's exactly that was going to be the caveat I gave to my answer. So I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, but just from but you're seeing men and how they're reacting. And sometimes I talk about Trump being superhuman in terms of crazy and stupid, right? I think the bar is so high for him. His two skills are that are almost unachievable is what I perceive to be his stupidity and his lunacy. And when you combine that with this masculinity issue, and the positions there, you mentioned Cuba, right? And that could be the next distraction, right? When this thing goes south, what I was thinking, my wife and I were talking today, and my wife was like, what could be next? And I would, because if this is to distract from Epstein, what the hell's going to distract from this? And I said, maybe it's an invasion of Cuba. How much danger do you think we're in? I mean, we're only a little over a year into this.
Listen, I don't know a way that it gets better, because the reality is, right, we're prospectively looking at what we're calling a blue wave coming up for the midterms. Obviously,
Right.
a lot of things can change between now and then, and I'm not a prognosticator of that. But in a world where you end up with at least one blue chamber, one Democrat held chamber, that's a check on power. But while he feels neutered in one area, he will absolutely lash out in others. And that is the goal of this administration, is to circumvent all the checks on power so that they can do whatever they want, right? Whatever issue we want to throw at it. So what danger are we in? I think this is only the beginning, because to me, they will look at this as, okay, we achieved our objective with Maduro. We have achieved our objective in Iran. Yes, it's going on. We don't really know what that objective is, though they're claiming they have done it, just like they claimed last summer. They destroyed all the nuclear capabilities. But they're saying they want regime change. Well, the regime's going to have to change now, right? So to them, mission accomplished. I would say that they don't view 3 lost soldiers' lives as, or now I believe the number is 4, as
Yes, it's 4.
significant in any way. So they will continue to go through that, because they don't pay the price. They will not they will avoid paying the taxes that go towards replacing the planes that were shot down. They will not pay for the benefits that go to the families of these 3 men, or I should say these 3 individuals. I don't know their gender. These 3 individuals who are no longer with us. So to me, I think everything they're doing is emboldening them to continue doing this. And part of the problem with that too is we also can't trust, when you asked me how much danger are we in, we also can't trust the information coming out of this administration. They regularly change statistics. They do not reveal those numbers. So that 4 service members dead, 3 planes shot down, we don't know what the reality of those numbers are. And more than that, you and I are just talking about the toll on Americans. This region is going up in flames right now.
Oh
There
yeah.
are missiles landing in half a dozen different countries. The geopolitical ramifications of the insecurity of a few men, I have no estimation for how big the toll of that could be when their fingers are on the triggers, and that terrifies me, because I don't know how it ends either. I think each accomplishment that they perceive themselves having emboldens them to take one step further. The next thing is Cuba. What's after that? Is it Greenland? Is it going into another, South American country? Who knows what it's going to be?
Yeah, and it's one of the news there, some of the reporting that isn't really that's kind of falling under the radar now, because how could it not, is um the Afghans and the Pakistanis are kind of in a little bit of a mini war right now too.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you're talking about a couple hundred miles, and
Hmm.
you're talking about influence from and to both of those countries, with different different entities in the Middle East. So this
Yep.
explosion
And,
could
and
be.
also, this greatly impacts the war in Ukraine. If we have fewer Tomahawk missiles, these
Yes.
companies can't produce them faster than they can produce them. So we can't send them there, even if Europe's going to pay for them. But Iran also supplies missiles to Russia. So Russia's stockpile goes down, I mean, it doesn't solve the conflict, and it leads to a continued stalemate in those countries as well. And again, more civilian lives will be lost, more turmoil.
And the Wall Street Journal reported yesterday that we are running low on ammunition. That another pressure point on Trump is that, to the extent that he's capable or even willing to understand anything, is that we are are these interceptor missiles that we use to shoot down
Mhm.
these retaliatory strikes from Iran,
Right.
because we have we've supplied them, I think rightfully, to Ukraine, and because of Trump's escapades thus far in the Middle East, we're running out of them. So there's
Right. Well,
we're hearing,
and I think that's the capture of like this huge problem with this administration. Now, granted, the caveat to this is we are not in the Situation Room.
right.
We're not sitting with the Joint Chiefs. There's a lot of information we don't have access to. However, when I look at the leadership of this administration and the president, like, they're not playing chess. At best, they're playing like shoots and ladders. There's no strategy going on here, which concerns me, because to your point, like, if we're running low on missiles, if we're running low on interceptors, I don't worry about Iran right now. I worry about Iran next week. Like, I think they're being very, very strategic in whatever way it is that they're going to retaliate. And I think I imagine we're about to be caught flat footed by whatever
Yeah, oh,
that
there's no
is.
doubt. And this is there's been plenty of wars that I've disagreed with, that we have been involved with. But this is and even I even kind of remember the Gulf War. I remember the George Bush days. I was much younger at the time. But even back then, and George Bush was no genius either, George Bush Jr. But at the same time, I mean, this is the first time I've had you on, so I think I've I feel like my job, your job is much more, I think is much more going to be effective across the board for changing the world. My main job is to remind everybody that Donald Trump is an idiot, right? And that as much danger as we are in, and we are,
Insane that takes so much work, but yes.
we have a buffoon surrounded by buffoons. And
Right.
so I feel like this is the first war in my lifetime where I am quite certain that the supposed enemy is much, much more strategic and much smarter than the people who are running at the upper echelons of both the leadership in the White House and, to an extent, whoever they've installed from Raising Cain and whoever else is the leadership in the military. And that is terrifying. But I want to take this back to masculinity too. So we've already covered them, right? Now, how do you think this is playing with these young men that voted for Trump in large amounts? We know he's hemorrhaging support across the board with Latino. A lot of the people that voted for him, independents, he's polling at like 25, 26%, whatever. Latinos around the same number across the board. I don't really know. I haven't seen a lot of where a lot of these young men, and it's not just young white men, it's young men of color too, came out in much larger numbers for Trump than we expected them to. One is, do you have any idea at this point how war is and the masculinity, the fake masculinity associated with it is playing with them? Have you heard anything on that front?
Yeah, so I'm going to direct your readers and listeners, since we're on Substack, to two things they should absolutely check out. The first of which is a project called the Young Men's Research Initiative. They are available on Substack as well. The other is the Speaking with American Men project, which is two great groups that do a ton of research and data publication on the state of young men, their opinions on Trump, so many other issues affecting them. Two incredible groups I really encourage your audience to check out. So the question you just asked me, there is not necessarily strong data on it yet. However, there is a lot of existing data and conversation around isolationist views, anti-war views, young men, and Trump. So if your audience checks out Speaking with American Men, they had a blog post that the reason I was just looking at my other monitor was to pull that up about 2 days ago, where they talked about how isolationist young men are. So if you start putting two and two together, of young men are relatively isolationist. About 50% of men under 45 want to withdraw from NATO, which, I mean, that number boggles my mind, but okay, half of young men want to leave NATO. You pair that with a lot of people who supporting Trump because he's running as this candidate against forever wars. We are seeing that young men are willing to sour on Trump over Epstein, over ICE and immigration, even though these were some of the main reasons they supported them in the first place. And though I'm getting ahead of the polling data when I say this, I would be hard pressed to believe that this is keep maintaining or growing his support with young men. Because it's not only is this against the policies that they're looking for, it's doing nothing to help them economically. And economics and affordability are the most important issues to young men today. Another poll from YMRI, or a study I should say, found of the top 7 issues that young men care about, 5 of them are related to the economy. It's the cost of housing, it's inflation, it's the budget and the deficit, it's career opportunities. These other things, yes, they all matter, but they matter in the context of, does this move me towards a more affordable life as a young man in America? And the reality of this war, it's not going to do that. In fact, it's more likely to increase the price of things as oil prices shoot up, trade through the Strait of Hormuz gets delayed, if not shut down entirely. trade across this whole region, again, is going to be effective. So that's going to impact inflation significantly in the price of things, transport costs, et cetera. So yes, I'm getting ahead of the polling, but my estimation would be is that no, this will not help him in any way with young men. If anything, they'll continue to sour on him because of this.
And when you say continue, so they've been souring on him overall. Like, I know
Yes.
with Joe Rogan speaking out finally, at least criticizing some of the Trump administration. I assume a lot of these, these men, well, young men and not so young men, are probably influenced by him. So there's been, so across the board though, people, that men as Trump supporting men as a whole been souring on him since January 20th, 2025.
I absolutely, I will say specifically again with young men, just because that's where I've seen most of the polling data lately. It exists across the board, but that's the world I live in. I believe the stat I saw recently was 63% of young men blame Trump for the state of the economy and for the fact that they do not feel like their economic situation has gotten better. And so when again the promise to them was this will be the opportunity economy for you. No, they're pinning the blame on him for the state that they're in right now, which means they're absolutely turning on him.
Should we be mad at men? Should we be mad at young men for putting us in this position?
I'm glad you brought this. Yeah, I know. I'm glad you brought this question up because I think it's so important and it's a nuanced answer. One, all of our feelings are valid. You should absolutely, if you want to be mad at men, be mad at men. I am mad at men a lot of times. I'm mad at myself. I am a man. So yes, absolutely. Now, part two of this is intersectionality matters. I will never tell someone who does not look like me, have a life experience like me, how they should engage with someone else, how they should feel about someone else. That is on that I don't have the experience they have. So only they can kind of speak to that. I can engage with them on it, but I'm not going to tell them you're wrong. Here's what you should be doing instead. We can have discourse. The third piece of this is after you have your feelings, which we are all allowed to have, and they are all right and deserve acknowledgement, we have to say, what is it we are trying to do and accomplish? Okay. If you want to be mad at men, be mad at men. If you want to say, I hate this president, I hate this administration, I hate the state of this country, I want to do something about it, you have a couple of options. You kill everybody who disagrees with you, you throw them out of the country, you throw them in jail, or you kind of have to convince some people to agree with you and start to make change possible. Now, I don't hear anybody talking about those first three, probably for good reason, which means that we have to convince people to start aligning with us. That job does not fall to all of us to have to do because it's not safe for everyone to have to do. But what I know is that I, as a white man, again, I can walk into almost any room in this country and it's safe for me to be there. It's not right, but those are the facts on the ground. So that I can go into a room and confront the men who put us in this position. So to get back to your question of should we be mad at men, the part two to that of whether or not we should be is what does that mean for us and how we engage with them going forward? To which I will say to you, I do not believe shame is going to get us out of this situation. And I think shame helped put us here. To me, shame is about making ourselves feel good and feel superior. You're a flippin' idiot. I can't stand you. I'm so much better than you. I don't support that guy. Shame is all about us. We get a sense of, quite frankly, braggadociousness because of it. Someone might change their behavior because of shame, but we are getting them to change their action. We are not getting them to change their beliefs. And if we want lasting change in this country, we have got to get past shame as a tactic. And we use it because it feels good. Again, it feels good for us to yell and put down. And we might, yes, you might convince a few people to do a few different things differently. But if we want lasting change at scale, shame is not the way to get there. So feel the anger. If you feel like your anger prevents you from being in this dialogue with someone else in a way that's constructive, step away. Let somebody else rise to the occasion. That is totally fine. It's not all of our jobs to be in all of the rooms. Again, I know as a white man, I can go talk to the guy who voted for Trump and try to engage with him in a way that will change that position, that positionality of him for the future. But I will not get there by berating him at every opportunity. By making him feel like an idiot is what got us here. By making Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth feel like less of a man is what made them into the people they are now. Shame is what turned them into that. Bullying is what turned them into that, right? Shame is bullying by another name. Like let's be real about it, right? Fat shaming, body shaming. We get angry when people do that, but yet we're deploying it as a tactic on other people. It's not going to pull us to the place we need to be.
So what do you so when you go into these spaces, I want to get a little bit more granular too, because I want folks to kind of understand like what it is that you do. I want to understand what it is that you
Yeah.
do because I want to do it, right? A little bit more, a lot more. And I look, I you know, and I and again, I you know, I understand what you're saying about being safe and using privilege because, like, but I was shaming. Like when before I, after the election, I remember going when I was first started going live. I would go live on TikTok a lot because I wasn't into Substack yet, and TikTok was working at the time for me. And I would kind of very boldly say, as 'cause a lot of folks from the MAGA community would kind of come on because they were there on TikTok. They're not really here yet on Substack, and they would kind of come at me. But I would. Just lost my train of thought as I was kind of rambling, heading down that road. But I would say, young men who voted for Kamala, who voted for Trump, who feel that they have a really hard time, right? That it's been really hard for them, right? That they their economic opportunities were limited, their romantic opportunities where they weren't going after them. Because they felt isolated and insecure. And I would make the argument that, you're not a Black woman, right? You're not even a woman, right? So statistically, if you look at the data across the board, it's never really been that bad for white guys, right? It's harder, but I don't think in terms of the comparison of what folks of color and women still have to overcome. I'm not sure that it's really, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I'm not sure that it really was that bad for white guys to choose to vote for a clearly a bigoted, misogynist creep twice. So I'd like you to kind of address that, and then specifically, like, what are you doing? Like, what rooms are you going into? Where are you talking to people? And how do I do that? I know they're totally unrelated questions, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to forget. I can always go on a tangent and forget what the hell I'm talking about. So I wanted to get them both out at you, even though they're not this.
No, absolutely. I want to regurgitate the first questions you just to make sure I understood it correctly, which is you're asking me, was it really ever bad enough for white men such that it made sense for them to vote the way they did?
Yes.
Okay.
And opt to become just extraordinarily misogynistic, bigoted. Was it ever that bad that it justifies those life choices?
So here's what I'll say to that is this is where I think, yes, on the whole, in the ecosystem of the world we have, it was not that bad for men at all. It absolutely wasn't. However, this is where class becomes a component of it, and I think that matters to the white male conversation if we want to understand how we got into the position we were. When I talk to people a lot, I say, there are Trump voters who I'm interested in engaging with, and there are Trump voters who I'm not interested in engaging with. The ones I don't want to talk to, obviously, are the ones who are just 100% racist, sexist, misogynist, whatever, but also people who voted this way even though they knew better, right? These are the wealthy people who voted the way they did because they wanted lower taxes or whatever that component of it was. However, the group I'm willing to be in communication with is white men. Well, specific to our conversations today, white men. I'm happy to talk to anyone who feels this way, but like folks who voted the way they did because the economy is not working for them anymore, and they were doing a throw the bums out type vote, and this seemed like the only way forward for them. Because that to me is an education issue where through conversation, we can attempt to reach the people we need to talk to. So what I would say to you is on the whole and relative to everyone, it was not that bad for white men. However, relative within the white male conversation, at those at the bottom of the economic spectrum who tend to over-index vote versus those in the middle and a little bit more than those at the top, I don't forgive it. I understand why psychologically they were doing what they were doing, because they felt that the system did not work for them anymore, and this was the populist candidate, and the populace is willing to do whatever it is to reach them. So again, I understand their logic, and that's all I'm trying to break down by saying that. So the next part of your question, well, any follow-ups on that before I address that, like what kind of rooms and what we do?
No, no. Well, actually, when you go into what kind of rooms and what do you do, Lacey also had asked a question on here too. When you go into that, she's also asking how do you suggest that we help people change their minds? So, in addition to giving us specifics about where you go, what do you do, you know, what do we all do, you know, as well? How do we get through?
That's absolutely. So Lacey, thank you for the question. Really appreciate that. I appreciate your interest. So this is a big question. So I'll start to tackle different pieces of it. Please, Mitch, feel free to jump in at any point.
Okay.
So I'll say this, for a long time, this type of work has suffered, I think, from the problem of not having enough structure to it. And I feel lucky that I come into this from a business background of having started and sold a few businesses. And I look at this as a market like anything else, to which I say, okay, there's an inverted pyramid. There's a funnel of like people at different stages of the process. So where do I sit in this equation? I see myself sitting at the top of the funnel, because I am not a trained therapist. I'm not a social worker. I don't lead men's circles. My job is to show men what is possible for them, the type of life they could be living, the type of connections and bonds they could be creating. That's why I try to avoid the politics part of it, because I need them to see, I need to shift the Overton window on what's possible and then move them down the funnel to the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. And then along that process, then eventually they'll start maybe to get that political exposure. But I just want to catch them in the net, because if they're not in the net, we can't even have the conversation. So that's what I see as my role, at least in the digital ecosystem. How do I accomplish that right now? It's through what I do online and digital. It's through some projects I'm starting with some grant money that I've recently been given. And then the other big project I have is what I talked about that I do with Mark Green earlier, which is Walking Talking Men, which is a space. There are now 17 chapters we have across the country. There's 3 international chapters. Men get together at whatever cadence that group wants, and they just walk and talk. It's usually an hour, 2 hours. You get together, talk about what's going on in your life. We have, no politics, no sales, no religion are our 3 kind of rules that we suggest people adopt, but we let them do what they want. Because people need connection. They need a space to be seen. They need to know who their neighbors are. And I will say this work has made a world of difference. I've had men reach out to me. Mark's heard it from other men who were considering ending their own lives. And they said, this group changed that. It gave me a space to connect with men in a way I didn't believe was still possible for me. So that's a key part of it. I would say especially that group is great for targeting middle-aged and older men. I think that is our key flex point for this group, is connection and community, getting them reestablished to other men, getting them built into their neighborhoods, because a lot of them don't have that. And what we've discovered through our work so far is that most of the men who come to these groups, they come from the same position. They're coming because they've gotten divorced, they've moved, they changed jobs, or they became a parent, and then their kids left. I'm sorry, they retired or their kids left the house, so they have a lot more free time on their hands. But what has happened is they've discovered, oh my goodness, I either had no relationships or all my relationships were via my child or my partner. And when those things left, or my job, when those things left, I have no connection left. And so this has been an amazing opportunity to help men build connections just on the prospect of who they are, right? Being seen for that identity, not for the job, the relational status that they might have. And that's starting to help connect them in new and interesting ways. I had an amazing conversation with a man. And again, this is why I say it's important that I do this work as a white man, because I will not be harmed through dialogue. But there was a man who came to our group who said some transphobic things in conversation with me. And I challenged him on it, and we had a very respectful, very polite conversation. And at the end of the walk, I kind of parted ways with him because I needed a breather after doing that. That's a very intense dialogue to be in. And he said, he was like, you know what, thank you for that. You really opened my eyes to thinking about this in a way I haven't before. That's the first step. That is the step that gets someone to start changing their mind on it. It's not shaming him for saying you shouldn't be that way, because yes, he shouldn't be that way. And that's what I want to do. I want to take this ball, throw it at his head and be like, come on, dude, this is just a person living their life. But I know I'm not going to get him to change his behaviors. And if I want him to do that, it starts with that conversation of, I see you, I want to engage with you differently on this topic. And again, as a white cisgender man, I can do that. And that's my step to hopefully make him safer for other people. With young men, a lot of the work that we're doing comes down to a couple things. Number one is they cannot be what they can't see. And I think we've recognized that for a long time about little girls and all these other types of people and identity groups, but men need that too. You know, if we want to model care, if we want to model compassion, if we want to model the equality of and sharing of domestic labor, other men need to show young men that that's how they live their lives and that's what's possible. So one is working with other men to say, like, put all of yourself on display. Be dirty, be vulnerable, talk about your tears, take an active role in the household, and do not hide these things from your sons. You know, I had a post that went a little bit viral earlier this year after the Grammys, because one of the things that I loved, well, I loved that Bad Bunny won, but what I loved about Bad Bunny winning was that he cried and he never once said, I'm sorry. So often, and we all do this regardless of gender, we get up on stage, we win an award, or I have not gotten up on stage and won awards in front of a national audience, but you'll see people do this and they say, I'm so sorry for crying. No one should have to apologize for that. Your emotions are valid. You don't owe us anything. You get to have the response you have. And so I think it was so powerful that he cried. He did not hide it and he didn't apologize for it. And that's something that more boys need to be seeing. They need those role models. And there was even just research that came out earlier this last week, and it was saying that boys are looking for role models who are not celebrities or politicians. They want to see the fireman. They want to see the farmer. They want to see the cop, you know, whatever those categories of jobs are that when we're little kids we think about wanting to have. They want that stuff. They want to know what an everyday life is like. So number one is modeling that. And then number two is 100% getting involved in schools. I have the great pleasure of working with a gentleman by the name of Johnny Cole, who runs a group called Hey Brother Co. And they do educational trainings in schools to help boys become more emotionally aware, emotionally integrated. And that work is critically important in those universes. It's also important because it elevates for parents what is going on. And I think that's the third pillar of this with the young men conversation, is parental engagement is key. I want to call on the work of Ruth Whitman, who is the author of Boy Mom, and I want to call on the work of Christopher Pepper and Joanna Schroeder, who wrote a book called Talk to Your Boys. If you are raising a young boy in America today, if you have friends who are raising a young boy in America today, please read these books. They're important not only because they will help you figure out how to have conversations with your son, but they will help you figure out how to have conversations with yourself, right? I read Talk to Your Boys. It's on my shelf over there. And not because I have a kid, not because I'm planning on having a kid in the immediate future, but because the questions in that book forced me to confront my own beliefs and made them stronger for the dialogues they made me have with myself. That was a long-winded answer, and I will pause here for follow-ups or anything else we can get into.
It was a great answer, though. And, you have a lot to say, but everything you're saying really matters. So I very much, appreciated all the answers. And I have a 10-year-old. So I have a 10-year-old son. And, it's interesting because I see, again, I myself try, I'm going to read the boy, Talk to Your Boys for sure.
Please do. Yeah.
But I
wonderful.
see the difficulty, and I can see it in like my son, fortunately, for better or worse, I guess, he sees me. Yeah, he sees this world that I'm living in. He's, the political world where, unfortunately, he sees me shaming. At least also, but it took me 57 years to get to this point. Because it's always a journey. At least, like when I talk about some of the, like with the community here, when we're just talking straight up news and some of the stuff that ICE has done to the kids, it breaks me. Some of that breaks me. And interestingly enough, online was the place where it was the first place outside of my home, my immediate family, where I was willing to cry, where I was willing to break. And I've broken here at times. But again, in my 20s, hell no, especially if, I mean, the internet wasn't a thing. It was, but not like today. I would have never been able, because my dad was was a meat and potatoes guy, right? I mean, my dad will cry
Yeah.
now, but he's 91. It took him a long time to get there. So I can understand where that extraordinarily difficulty, because of what our culture, the cultural boundaries it puts around our kids. And I really don't
Yeah.
want my son to grow up with those limitations. I want him to be able to cry and to be able to be, because
Mhm.
I understand the value of it, and to not be afraid to experience all human emotions everywhere. And I can see how
Mhm.
over time that can really, that conditioning can stifle you, and kind of bring us where we are today. What about for Lacey, for her question though? Like, what can
Mhm.
we talked about with guys? And I know we're hitting about an hour. I appreciate your time. I know we're going a little longer, but what can we know? What those of us who are in privileged positions do, like what we can do,
Mhm.
right? But what can Lacey do as a woman? People of color, women of
Mhm.
color, white women across the board. What do people who don't have the safety that we have,
Yeah. Yeah.
what do you recommend for them to do to be able to engage right now?
Listen, let me say, number one, your own safety is paramount, and it is
Right.
not the job of a victim to help the victimizer. So if you are someone who that will be is a problem for because you're actively in harm, you've experienced harm in the past, please do not put this obligation on yourself. It is the
Absolutely.
job of those of us who are in this class to do that work. So I want to make that point clear right off the bat. I do not expect anyone else to do this other than white men doing this for themselves, or other men doing it within their groups. Point two, I always want to make is every single man is different. You will know the best thing to do in that situation, or consult resources to help you do that. However, I think the simplest and easiest parts of this work: share the content. Tell people about me and the work that I do. Tell people about Hey Brother Code. Tell people about Equimundo. Tell people about all there are amazing resources out there, and our work does not get the and I know this sounds selfish, but I really mean it. Our work does not get the headlines, and it does not get the recognition it deserves. A lot of work in this space gets sucked up, or a lot of the attention gets sucked up by folks like Scott Galloway, by Justin Baldoni, by Terry Crews. And I don't mean that these are bad people. We can have other conversations about that. But my point is to say it gets sucked up by celebrity. It gets
Hmm.
focused on men who already have platforms and back into this work. And they are not those of us who have been in the weeds. And I'm at the least tenured edge of folks who've been in the weeds in this work for a long time, but they have not been paying attention to this. So I think the biggest thing you can do is help elevate people like us and the organizations doing this work, and to do it in a way. It's not about saying, I think you need to do this and shaming. It's like, share a specific piece of content, share a specific point. I think a great example from yesterday, I have two ideas for videos I want to make today. One is about Iran, and the other is I love film, and I was watching the SAG Awards last night, and Woody Harrelson and Harrison Ford, they had a beautiful, I thought, moment in which Woody Harrelson gave Harrison Ford the Lifetime Achievement Award. And Harrison Ford, Han Solo, Indiana Jones,
Yeah.
Jack Ryan, President of the United States, get off my plane. One of the greatest macho leading men with swagger and like disconnected manhood identity in Hollywood history, I thought gave one of the most beautifully vulnerable speeches I've ever seen a man give. And to do it at his age too, where he also presents so much more vulnerably because of his age, I was like, that is what we all need to see. Like, this is the way to talk about yourselves, to reveal yourselves. The way he talked about his own insecurity about never knowing if he was going to find the right thing for him. Like, these are little moments where you can open a dialogue without feeling like you're forcing education. Uh, Now, I don't know Lacey's situation. I don't know if she's talking about wanting to talk to maybe a partner or a parent. If you're looking to also speak to young children, if you're raising a son, if you have a nephew, some great resources are people like uh, uh, oh gosh, Style with Pyle. I forget her Instagram handle off the top of my head, but she is an amazing. She's a former teacher. I'm going to look it up while we're chatting, because that way folks can grab it. But Pyle is a former teacher. She is now raising two sons, and she will do these amazing videos. That there are a few other creators who I've seen them from before as well. And they will watch, it's Pyle for Style, Payal for Style, for spelled out FOR. She'll watch a trending video like the hockey, the locker room hockey issue from last week, and she'll talk about it with her sons. And it's a wonderful resource for those of you looking to have those same conversations. So again, I go back to like, there are so many amazing content creators out there doing this work. Like the number one step you can take is trying to put this content in front of the eyes of people who need to see it.
That's awesome. And Jonathan, one last unfair question that I don't know if you can answer. Are we going to be okay? Are young men going to be okay? Middle-aged men, older men? Are we going to be okay?
I would love to give you hope, Mitch. I don't feel hopeful today. For a lot of reasons.
I did not think you were going to go there, but I appreciate the honesty. Wow.
Yeah. I want to believe that we will be, but it's, again, if you were to talk to me last weekend before this happened,
yeah,
maybe. But right now, I would say right now in this exact moment, I feel a little despondent.
Yeah. Well,
however,
okay.
I am seeing young boys today do amazing things. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm jaded because of age.
Yeah. Welcome to the club. You know what? We'll have to do this again. And then hopefully things will look brighter. Jonathan, what are your socials if people want to follow you? I know you're here on Substack. I think you're here on, you're here on Substack, aren't you?
Yes. I'm here on Substack as, yes, it's What Did He Say on Substack. I break down a crazy thing a man said each week. And then on socials, it's Real John Jacobs, RealJonJacobs. Would love to continue the conversation with anyone who may have had a question we didn't have a chance to get to. Would love to come on and chat with you again, Mitch. This was such a delight.
This was awesome. Thank you again, my friend. I'll see you soon. Okay, take care, Jonathan.
Of course. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Take care. We'll see you soon.